Hi everyone, welcome back to Innoskrit. So this video is going to be all about exception handling. And since InfyTQ is coming and we know that exception handling is one of the very important topic for that. Not only for InfyTQ, it is also one of the very important topic for your technical interviews. So it will also help you for your technical interview preparation. So we are going to discuss some very important topic, and this video is really going to be very informative and helpful for you guys. So yeah, let's start with the video. So what is the format of exception handling, how we handle exception in Java, right? So let's say a developer is writing a code and developer thinks that there is some part of code that can cause exception in future, right? So he knows that this is a part of the code that can cause exception in future. So there will be a try block that will contain the lines of code that may contain exception, and then if there is an exception, it has to be caught, right? So there will be a catch block for that particular try block to catch that exception, right? So we have a try block which will throw an exception, and the exception thrown will be handled by this catch block, right? So this is the format of basic try and catch block. Now let's discuss nested try and catch. Let's discuss nested try and catch. So let's say we have try block. Let me write a code snippet and then we'll discuss. Okay, so let's say we have this code, right? It has a try block, and then it has another inner try and catch block, which is a nested try catch block, and then for the outer try we have a catch block, which is outer catch block, right? Now let's say there is an exception inside try and catch block. Let's say we have 5 by 0 inside this try block. So that means this is divide by 0. That means it will throw arithmetic exception. So when there is an exception inside this try block, it has to be handled. So the control will move to this catch block, which is the inner catch block corresponding to this inner try block, right? So the control has moved to this catch block. Now when the exception has been handled by this inner catch block, the exception has already been handled, right? So there is no sense of this catch block, right? Because exception has been already handled. This means that if there are nested try catch block and the exception has been handled by inner catch block, the outer catch block will not get executed, right? Okay, I'll repeat myself. Let's say we have nested try and catch block, and there is an exception in the try block, and it is handled by any of the inner catch block, then the outer catch block will not get executed because exception has been handled. And in the program, exception has to be handled once, right? So this is the first case. Now let's say what happens if there is no inner catch block. So let me modify the code. Okay, so let's say this is the code. We have inner try block, but there is no catch block corresponding to this try block. So now what will happen? An exception will occur. An arithmetic exception will occur. So it will search for the nearest catch block. So for this, the nearest catch block will be this outer catch block. So now if this is the case, the control will move to this outer catch block and the exception will be handled by this catch block, right? So this is when there is no inner catch block for the try block, right? But if you have noticed, if you notice this code, I removed the catch block, but I included this finally block. I removed this catch block, but I added this finally block. Why is it so? This is because try block cannot exist alone. It should either be followed by finally block or catch block, or both can also be present. That means try should be followed by either catch, try can also be followed by only finally block, and they both can be present also, right? This is the case with try, catch and finally block, right? I hope you understood. If there is a try block, either we should have a catch block or a finally block, or we can have both the blocks. But try cannot exist alone. I hope it makes sense. Try cannot exist alone. So we discussed format of try catch block, we discussed nested try catch block, and now we have discussed if there how the try, catch and finally block can be written inside our program, right? So try, just remember, try can't exist alone. It cannot exist alone, right? Now I have explained this code to you theoretically, right? Now what you guys can do, you can just open any of the editor and try to write this code, try to throw some exception using this try block and try to execute the code, just to have better understanding, right? Then you will know how the try catch blocks are actually working. Done? Okay, let's move to the finally block. The first very important point regarding finally block was same, that try block cannot exist alone. It should either be followed by finally block or catch block or both, right? For a try block, there can be only one finally block. Let's say we have a try block. Okay, so we have this try block, and corresponding to this try block, we have a catch block, we have a finally block. So this order is correct, because for a try block, we have one catch block and one finally block, right? So this is correct. Now for a try block, we have a catch block, but we have two finally block. So as I mentioned, for a try block, there can be only one finally block. That means this will give us compilation error, because there are two finally block present corresponding to a try block. Done? Okay, so for a try block, only one finally block is allowed. Does that mean that for a try block, only one catch block is allowed? No, that's not true. Let's say we have a try block, then for that try block, we can have multiple catch blocks. But there is a condition. What is that condition? Let's say we have a try block and we have three corresponding catch blocks for that try block, right? First catch block handles exception, which is the parent class of all exception. Second catch block handles is written for handling arithmetic exception, and third one is written for handling null pointer exception. So let me write it. Okay, so we have a try block and we have three catch block corresponding to this try block. First one is for handling exception. Second one is for handling arithmetic exception, and third one is for handling null pointer exception. Now let's say this try block throws some exception, right? So it will search for the nearest catch block that can handle that exception, right? Let's say let's take an example. Let's say it throws arithmetic exception, right? If it throws arithmetic exception, it will search for the nearest catch block that can handle this exception. So the control will move to this catch block, because this exception class is a parent of this arithmetic class. So that means this catch block can handle this exception, right? So that means that arithmetic exception will be handled by this catch block. Now let's take another example. Let's say it throws null pointer exception. Null pointer exception or number format exception, whatever exception we want to take, we can take it, right? So any exception that will be thrown by this try block, it will be handled by this catch block, because this exception class is a parent of all these subclasses, right? That means the control will never move to these two catch blocks. These two catch blocks become unreachable because of this catch block, and hence this is the reason this code will give us compilation error. But this does not mean that we cannot have multiple catch blocks. This compilation error is coming because of this catch block. Now let's say I remove this catch block from the top to the bottom. Catch, exception, right? Let's say I have moved this code. Now let's say arithmetic exception is thrown by this try block. It will be handled by this catch block. If null pointer exception is thrown by this try block, it will be handled by this catch block. And if any other exception is thrown by this try block, it will get handled by the last catch block. So this code will execute fine, right? So can we conclude that the order of exception, if there is a parent-child relationship between the classes, like these two are children of exception class. So if there is a parent-child relationship between the classes in multiple catch clauses, needs to follow bottom-up hierarchy. Bottom-up hierarchy means child first, then parent. Child first and then parent. But if order is reversed, it will give us error, right? So this will give us error, right? So we saw that multiple finally blocks are not allowed, whereas multiple catch blocks can be present. But if there is a relationship between the classes inside the catch, inside the catch, there is a parent-child relationship between the classes inside catch, the order will be child to parent. Otherwise, it will give us compilation error. Done. Now, there is one very important point related to finally block, which is finally block is always executed. Finally block is always executed, right? We saw that there can be try block and just finally block, no catch block. This format is absolutely correct, right? Catch block cannot be there for a try block, but in that case finally block should be there. So if there is no catch block, that means whatever exception is thrown by this try block, it is unhandled, because there is no catch block to handle that exception. In that case also finally block is getting executed. So finally block is always executed whether the exception is handled or not handled, right? So what is the use for this finally block? This finally block is used for some specific task, like closing the connection at the end of the program, releasing the resources at the end of the program. So these are some useful tasks which we can achieve using finally block. Also, if there is a return statement, inside the catch block, then also finally block is getting executed, right? Okay, so this is a point which we are going to discuss in our next video of exception handling, in which we are going to solve some problems. We'll see how the execution is happening. If there is a return statement inside the catch, then also finally is getting executed, how? So in the next video we are going to see that. As of now, just remember that finally block will get executed no matter what. It doesn't matter whether the exception is being handled or not. Finally will get executed. Now let's say we have all the three blocks. We have try block, we have catch block, and we have finally block in our program. So let me write two code snippet, and then we'll discuss what I want to convey using this point. Okay, so there are two code snippet on the screen. First one has try, then catch, then finally. Right? So catch follow this try and finally follow this catch. Again we have try, finally and catch. Right? So for the first code snippet we have try, catch, finally. For second we have try, finally and catch. Now whenever any exception is being thrown by this try block, the exception, it will search for the nearest catch. and it will be handled by this catch block, and then finally will get executed. But in this case, when there is an exception inside this try block, it will search for the nearest catch, but there is finally which is following this try block. So it will say that there is no catch block for this corresponding try block, and hence it will give us error, right? This is correct, but this will give us error because catch can only be just after try block. Try will always be followed by catch block. I hope it makes sense. So try catch finally is a correct order, but try finally catch is not a correct order. Now, as we discussed that multiple catch statements are allowed, we have one very similar concept. I am writing 2 lines on the screen, and then we'll discuss both the lines. Okay, so these are the 2 statements. Now I have a question. Can a catch block be written to handle multiple exceptions? Can we write a catch block to handle multiple exceptions at a time? So the answer is yes, we can use this pipe operator to do that, right? Now what is the difference? Why I have written these 2 statements? What is the difference? So first statement has arithmetic exception as well as exception class, which is the parent class of all the exceptions, right? We have arithmetic exception and we have null pointer exception. So if you will see, this statement will always get executed, whether it's a null pointer exception, whether it's number format exception, whether it is arithmetic exception, because there is this exception in this catch block. That means this will always be true, and hence it will throw compilation error. But if you will see the below statement, it has arithmetic exception, it has null pointer exception. There is no relationship between arithmetic and null pointer exception. So this statement is absolutely correct, right? So can I say that that a catch block can be written to handle multiple exceptions, but there is a condition that these classes cannot be related. These classes cannot be related like this. These are not related. There should not be any parent-child relationship amongst the exception. Arithmetic exception is a subclass for this exception. So this is not acceptable. If this is the case, we'll receive compilation error, and if there is no relationship between the classes, it will work absolutely fine. And we'll use this pipe operator. I hope it makes sense. Okay, so guys, I would request whatever we are discussing in this video, just please try to convert these theoretical concepts into the code and try to execute them, just to have better clarity that how things are working. Because whatever I am discussing theoretically, right? But you should know what is happening behind the scene. So for that, you will have to run the code, you will have to write the code and then run it. So please run each and every example we have discussed. So let's discuss difference between throw and throws keyword. So it is very important topic for your technical interview perspective, because if an interviewer is asking you exception handling questions, then definitely he is going to ask this difference of throw and throws keyword, because most of the people don't know about the difference of throw and throws, right? So let's discuss it. What is the difference between throw and throws? So let me write, first of all, let me write the syntax for each of the keyword. Okay, so I have written 2 statements, throw new input output exception and throw a statement using throws keyword. So from these 2 statements, we can see that this throw keyword is a statement which is used inside the method definition or a block to throw an exception, right? So it can be used inside a method definition or a block to throw any exception, not just input output exception, any exception. Whereas this throws keyword is used with the method signature. It is used with method signature, right? First one is, it is a statement and it is used with method signature to throw an exception. Second point is, it is used to throw one exception at a time. This is used to throw one exception at a time, whereas this throws keyword can be used to throw multiple exception at a time. As I mentioned, I intentionally mentioned these two exceptions using this throws keyword just to show you guys that not just one, we can throw multiple exception using this throws keyword, and it is just to throw one exception at a time. I hope the difference is clear. This is a key difference between throw keyword and throws keyword. Okay, so let's discuss our last concept for today's video, which is exception with classes. Right? So again, let me write two code snippets and then we'll discuss the difference between both of them. Right? Okay, so let's say we have this code snippet in which we have a class and we have a child class. This child class extends this parent class, and there is an overridden function which is this func, and the parent class function also throws some exception and the child class function also throws some exception. Right, let's see. Just ignore this blue marker for a while. First we'll look at this yellow one. So parent class function throws this exception, which is a parent class of this arithmetic exception. Parent class means this function can handle all the exceptions which are subclasses of these exception classes. If it throws this exception, that means it can handle all the exceptions which are subclasses of this exception class, right? And this again throws this arithmetic exception, which is the subclass for this exception class. That means it will work absolutely fine. Now let's say we change these exceptions. Parent class function throws arithmetic exception, whereas child class function, which is overridden function of parent class, throws this exception. Is it possible? It means that we are saying that child class method is capable of handling all the exceptions. It can handle arithmetic exception definitely, but along with arithmetic exception, it can also handle null pointer exception, number format exception, input output exception, and all other exceptions. But parent class is restricting this method to arithmetic expression. That means it is not possible. If we are overriding a method, it should carry out the functionalities. It is saying that it can only handle arithmetic exception, but it is extending its capabilities to all the exception, which cannot be done, which is not possible. So that means this will give us error if this is the case. So when there is an inheritance in the code and parent class method throws some exception, then the overridden method in the child class can either throw same exception, either it can throw exception or subclass of the exception, right? This is a subclass, but this exception is not a subclass of this arithmetic exception, and hence it will give us error. So this is one of the very important concept, and please, if you haven't understood this concept yet, I would request to please go through this concept again. Basically, the concept is very simple. If there is an overridden method, the overridden method can only throw the exception which is thrown by the parent class function, or the subclass of that exception which is thrown by the parent class function. It is very simple. Okay, so I hope you like this video. For quick revision, I'll attach the link of notes in the description box, which you can refer later, so that you will be able to revise everything we discussed in the video, and you'll be able to code it and test it, whatever is happening and how everything is happening. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you.